Now let's examine the anti-pollution safety equipment requirements of the Nebraska Chemigation Act. Specific devices must be installed and maintained on both the irrigation and chemical injection equipment. The anti-pollution safety equipment guards against three specific hazards. The first is unexpected shutdown of the irrigation pumping plant due to mechanical or electrical failure. Concentrated chemicals, or a mixture of chemicals and water, could then be drawn to the water source. The second is irrigation pumping plant shutdown failure while the chemical injection equipment continues to operate. Again, this could result in concentrated chemicals or a chemical-water mixture backflowing into the water source. It also could cause an undesirably high concentration of chemicals in the irrigation system, or both. Finally, the chemigation injection system could stop while the irrigation system continues to operate. This could result in water flowing through the chemical injection system into the chemical supply tank, overflowing it onto the ground. To prevent backflow to the water source if the irrigation system shuts down, Nebraska requires that an irrigation pipeline check valve be installed. It must be located between the irrigation pump and the chemical injection point in the irrigation pipeline. The valve must have positive closing action and a watertight seal. A spring-loaded mechanism is one way to provide positive closure. The force of the spring must be strong enough so back pressure does not result in leakage. The Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality maintains a list of check valves certified as meeting Underwriter Laboratory leakage standards. Check valves installed on Nebraska irrigation distribution systems must be on that list. A copy of the list is provided in your training materials. It also is available from NDEQ or your local NRD. Irrigation pipeline check valves ordinarily are part of a chemigation backflow prevention assembly. The assembly also contains a low-pressure drain, vacuum relief valve, inspection port, and a chemical injection port. Nebraska's regulations have specifications about each of these components. A vacuum relief valve is to be located between the irrigation pump and the irrigation pipeline check valve. When irrigation pipeline pressure falls below the critical level, the relief valve opens. This allows air to enter the pipeline, preventing a vacuum from developing. Breaking the vacuum prevents siphoning of chemical from the chemical tank into the water supply. Nebraska regulations also call for an inspection port or other viewing device. Ordinarily, the vacuum relief valve connection serves as the inspection port. Its purpose is to allow inspection of the irrigation pipeline check valve to ensure that it seats properly and there is no leakage past it. Next is the low-pressure drain. It is normally located directly under the vacuum relief valve. The drain must be mounted so that any leakage from the check valve enters the drain rather than flowing toward the water supply. The drain should be at least 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Nebraska's current rules and regulations do not provide guidance on closing pressure parameters. However, the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers recommends a closing pressure of at least 1 pound per square inch, but not exceeding 5 pounds per square inch. Nebraska regulations require the drain to be constructed of corrosion-resistant material or treated to prevent corrosion. When irrigation pipeline flow stops, the low-pressure drain automatically opens. Discharge through the drain usually is minimal. However, that discharge must be carried at least 20 feet from the irrigation water source. A 3/4 inch hose, tube, or other conduit meets this requirement. The soil surface may need to be graded to ensure gravity will safely direct leakage away from the water source. Backflow prevention also is required in the chemical injection line. A check valve in the chemical injection line prevents water flowing from the irrigation system into the chemical supply tank. According to NDEQ regulations, the valve shall be located between the point of chemical injection into the irrigation pipeline and the chemical injection pump. The American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers recommends installing the device at the injection port of the irrigation system. Regulations specify that the valve be constructed of chemically resistant materials and have a minimum 10 pounds per square inch opening or cracking pressure. The cracking pressure prevents chemical from flowing by gravity from the chemical supply tank into the irrigation pipeline. The last equipment item mandated by Nebraska regulations is a simultaneous interlock. The purpose of the interlock is to ensure that both the irrigation pumping plant and the chemical injection unit shut down simultaneously. The approach you use will depend on how your irrigation and chemical injection systems are powered. Some irrigation pumps are powered by internal combustion engines. Driving the chemical injection pump by belt from the irrigation pump drive shaft or an accessory pulley easily and adequately interlocks both mechanisms. This ensures that the chemical injection pump stops if the irrigation pump stops. Where the irrigation pump is driven by an electric motor, the chemical injection pump usually is driven by an electric motor on a separate circuit. The electric controls for the irrigation pump, irrigation system, and injection system should be wired so that all three systems will shut down if any one of them fails. In some cases, the injection pump may be located remotely from the irrigation pump. Although this makes direct shutdown interlock of the irrigation and injection pumps complicated, it nevertheless is required. In such cases, ASABE recommends an irrigation pipeline flow sensor. The sensor is installed in the irrigation pipeline immediately upstream from the chemical injection point. The device should be wired to assure injection pump shutdown in the event flow is lost in the irrigation line. Just as irrigation pipeline flow might stop unexpectedly, chemical injection line stoppages also can occur. Any of several things can happen: rupture or disconnection of the injection line, injection pump failure, loss of prime, the chemical tank becomes empty, or the chemical filter becomes plugged. In summary, 6 anti-pollution safety equipment items are required: an irrigation pipeline check valve, a vacuum relief valve, an inspection port, a low-pressure drain, a chemical injection line check valve, and a simultaneous interlock device.